Yay.
Good afternoon or good morning, Denise Mangiardi. This is Nick Mondello. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a pleasure finally to meet you, at least digitally anyway. Um, what I thought I might do is introduce you to our audience, and please correct me if I get anything not perfect, okay?
Yeah,
Uh,
don't worry.
in terms of her educational background, Denise attended the Berklee College of Music, where she graduated studying both piano and composition. She attended graduate school uh, at Trinity College in England, correct?
Yeah, and it's in Greenwich actually. It's now called Trinity Laban. That's their name now. They changed their name. Yeah.
Okay. And she also did postgraduate work studying in Bulgaria at the school there that works exclusively on film soundtrack composition and working as a composer, arranger, orchestrator in films. She is an accomplished pianist and vocalist, an accomplished big band and classical composer and arranger. She's composed numerous extended orchestral works. She's written for big bands, small groups. She's performed extensively both in New York and spent a fair amount of time in New Orleans. And currently she resides on the Isle of Wight in the United Kingdom in England. And she recently worked, I had the pleasure of working with her on the Youth Trumpet Scholars project, where she did some transcription and copying for the solo parts for Peter Meechan's Song of Hope. So, with that in mind, and I know you've done 7 or 8 albums as well,
Yeah.
or 5, and you've done some film documentary work and other things in the commercial composition world. So, Denise Mangiardi, who's originally from Freeport, Long Island,
Yay.
which is not too far from here. Welcome and thank you for taking time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be doing this. This is exciting.
Denise, tell me a little bit about when you were younger. At what point did you kind of see the light that I would want to be a professional musician and I want to be a professional arranger composer? When did that
Well,
happen?
actually, I'm always wanted to play from the time I was very young, but it wasn't until my mother brought home a piano when I was 10. So I didn't actually have an instrument really in our house. But as soon as I got the piano, I went right to it. And the first song I figured out was Time to Remember, and that time in September. I remember that. But the thing that really, I used to be completely obsessed with, I don't know if you remember, do you remember Million Dollar Movie on
Sure.
Channel 9? Yeah. And it used to play like, every single day of the week, and 2 times on Saturday, 2 times on Sunday. And I would sometimes watch the same movie 9, whatever, how many times that was. And there was a couple of movies I saw, but there was one song, a couple of movies I saw in particular. And one of them was about a composer. I don't even remember who the composer was. It was a very old movie. And I can't even remember the name of the movie, but basically the composer had never heard his own music. So he was able to get into the stage. It was one of these really dramatic movies, probably from the 40s or 50s. I don't remember when it was. and he could only get in the second half to hear his music. But it was something about that. And then the other thing that really struck me was when I saw another movie. I think it was called Close Encounters, something like that. It was basically a movie about Ann Todd. She plays a concert pianist, and James Mason played her really like cruel teacher. And she had to play the Rachmaninoff second concerto, and that just got me. I mean, when I heard the second concerto, for me, it was just the orchestration. And that's really what really got me going. I mean, that was like a light switch went off. It was just, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
And you were performing when? Early at 14?
Yeah. I started when I was 14, but I didn't really, I was a very bad piano student in the beginning. and basically all I did was write a bunch of songs. And the first place I ever played was at my father's place in Long Island. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't there. It was a place called The Bitter End. That was my first gig in New York City. And I had written a whole bunch of songs by the time I was 15. And then I went to my father's place out in Long Island. And yeah, that was my first introduction. But I got a scholarship to Marymount College, which is in Tarrytown. And I did a piano major there. And I'm very, very dyslexic. So I didn't know I was dyslexic. I wasn't really sort of, those days nobody really paid attention to it. So basically I was there and I was very intimidated by the concert pianist teacher that I had, Miss Harrington. And she basically made me feel really intimidated because she knew that I couldn't read the way I could have. And instead of trying to figure out what was wrong, I just quit the school and went to Berkeley. And I got accepted to Berkeley, got a scholarship there. And then when I got to Berkeley, I was like, oh my God, this is, wow, intense, because all of a sudden I didn't know anything about improvising or anything like that. And Berkeley was great in those days because, I got it because of my piano, whatever skills, and my ear, I have good ears. And so basically I got in there and they threw me in classes with players that are much better than you, which is so great about Berkeley. And I had the most amazing arranging teachers. I was so lucky because Wes Hensel was still there. A lot of really great teachers were there. But I had this one guy named Bob Chestnut who was amazing. And he was a little guy, and he was just like the greatest teacher. And he just taught me everything I know about small band, like 3 horns or something like that, with rhythm section. And that really got me falling in love with writing and arranging. It was a great, great school for arranging. And I didn't go back to Berkeley for composition until 10 years later. So I think I did 5 semesters or something like that. And then I went back 10 years later. I got my degree in composition because I found that when I was performing, because I always performed and played, and I always found that performing would sort of, affect the kind of outcome I wanted in the way that I could make it happen. So it forced me to be a better writer in a small band ensemble because that was practical. But I knew that, eventually and I eventually started working with a lot of really great pianists. So a lot of times I didn't play, which kind of really made me feel like I was losing my way because I really wasn't a stand-up singer, and I knew that. But I did it for years, but I did it anyway. And anyway, make a long story short, I just basically found that performing wasn't exactly, I wanted to do more. I heard things and I wanted to recreate the things that I kind of wanted to hear. And I just kept going and going, trying to expand, because that's what I was always trying to recreate that.
And you went to New Orleans as well.
Yes, I went to New Orleans because it was really an amazing story. But when I was living in New York, I had a really good friend named Jeff Meyer, and I had recorded a whole bunch of children's songs. There's a whole bunch of albums out that I've done for him in New York City, and we were very good friends. And we had a very good mutual friend named Michael Plara. And Michael was from New York originally. And I knew Michael from New York City when I used to be a waitress, because everybody was a waitress in New York when they were doing a musician. And I knew Michael. And when I came back from Australia, because I used to live in Australia, I came back and I told Jeff I wanted to do a new album, my first album. So he recommended going down to New Orleans and record it there. So Michael ended up producing the record. And then I fell in love with New Orleans, and I moved from where I was in Colorado to New Orleans, and that started a kind of great love affair. I moved there in 1997, I think it was. Yeah, it
And
was
the
great.
move, the move to the UK.
Yeah, well, that was much later because I was moving around because my ex-husband was an international, worked in the utility world, and he had to move around a lot. So we moved to Paris first, and then we moved to London, and then I just basically landed up staying here because I have two kids, and they were in college or high school, whatever at the time, and so I wanted my younger daughter to finish before she went off to Australia. So that's how I landed up staying here actually. So I wanted to really make sure that they finished their education. So yeah.
And what you have mentioned so far is basically performing, singing, recording. Uh, at what point did you start getting into the film scoring? Uh,
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've always wanted to get into film scoring from the very beginning, actually. And I think that so about maybe in 2000 and what was it, 2009, I took a online a film scoring one from Berklee College of Music, which is a great course. I did the course, and I did that, and then I did two. I did two versions, and then I did a mixing course. And I think that every single thing I've ever done in my life was always associated somehow uh, with creating the kind of things that I heard, in my head, which always was very cinematic. So, and we all do what we can to survive. All musicians do. So, and I'm grateful for it because basically I ended up, running a recording studio and for 10, well, still doing it. But I only did it because I was trying to find a way of producing my own music. That's how it started. And I think it starts that way for a lot of people. So I basically, started to get more and more equipment and things like that. And that's, kind of how it happened. So, but the filming kind of mentality was always there. So when I went to Bulgaria, that's when I really jumped in because basically during COVID, I knew I couldn't play and I couldn't perform and teach and whatever, record people rather. And so I went to Bulgaria, and it's called the Film Scoring Academy of Europe, and it's run by a guy named Andy Hill, who's actually originally from Chicago, but he lived everywhere, L.A., Texas, and he spent some time in Paris and also in Ireland, because originally I thought that the school was in Dublin because they had a really fantastic orchestra associated with the school. But I didn't realize they had moved to Bulgaria. And he's great. He was the producer of Hollywood for like 10 years, all during the, Lion King period. So he's a pretty amazing guy. And he started the school. And so basically it was really great. It was very hard, but it was a great experience. Really great. So we all get our masters in film scoring, and it was very, very demanding. We would have to come up with in 2 days, all the parts for a 66-piece orchestra, have it ready, prepped for Pro Tools, have the click track ready, all the mock-ups, everything like that. So, really, it taught us all to be real professionals, and it is, it's a very, very good school. So I recommend it. It's tough, but it's really good.
let me
So,
ask you a question. Um, if you were going to describe your compositional approach, let's say for a big band like Diva, which is going to be at the Youth Trumpet Scholars event, or an orchestra, or a film scoring project. Those are very, very diverse
yeah.
things. However, do you have any sort of common compositional threads that you use in all three of those areas?
Yeah, I do. I really, I'm very obsessed with harmony. And I'm obsessed with the idea of creating really interesting textures and harmonic sounds. So um, every single thing I do is always probably, obviously, when you're doing film, you have to adhere to the film, and you have to, um, you really have to do what people ask you to do for the film and do the best you can. But in doing that, you always find another way of finding the language that you have, which for me happens to be creating. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but I love creating beautiful sounds, even though it might not be beautiful. It could be, for me, texturally, interesting. But I always like to think that whatever I do is interesting and it catches the attention of people somehow, or really adds to emotion and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I would probably say my melodic and harmonic sense. I always strive for very, something that satisfies me personally, and that's probably what I would say. Um, like I was just thinking, I remember I mentioned to you I loved the Mel Lewis band and Thad Jones band. I mean, I used to listen to that one album, New Life, about a million times. I just love that album, and I mean, it's gorgeous. Bob Brookmeyer's arrangements were just fantastic, and Mel Lewis's and Thad Jones's. Wow, I mean, just really great writing and just beautiful textures and all that kind of stuff. And so, it started off with that stuff. So that's what So when I got to the strings in the orchestra, I sort of carried everything I learned from all that kind of stuff into orchestration and with the traditional orchestra. But I like to merge them. So I like to merge the two sounds somehow, if I can get away with it.
Well, I must tell you, and I've said this to you in other conversations, your string writing is just luscious.
That's what I like. I like lush.
Okay.
Have you
It
ever
is.
have you ever heard?
Well, let me ask you this. That leads to an interesting question, I think. What makes good string writing?
Oh, well, I had a great teacher at Trinity Laban. His name is Stephen Montague, and he always said, he was a great teacher, and he basically said that whenever you're writing, make sure you write for a person who is not an amateur, but not a professional. And I think that is extremely important to remember, because whenever you go in to write, you have to take that into consideration, because you're not going to have any rehearsal time. So I think that's a big, huge, I mean, that's one small element, because what it does is it forces you to be more simplistic, and not try to do anything that's too complicated or too difficult for even you're a great player, because basically you want to do the best job you can in trying to simplify things, but you can still do that by using textures and harmony. And I listen to a lot of music, so I have so many great favorites that I love. But I absolutely love Stravinsky, and I love like Petrushka, and I mean, it's just pretty incredible writing. And I love Bernstein. I listen to West Side Story is fantastic in terms of the orchestration and stuff like that. But if you really listen to the strings and stuff like that, you hear a lot of really interesting little linear things going on, that are sort of set apart from the traditional, but they're not, necessarily incredibly difficult. Well, he Bernstein to some stuff, but so does Stravinsky. But I think in terms of, I don't know, it's a good question. I think it's really important to study scores. You have to. That's all there is to it. Study as many scores as you possibly can.
When you say
Look at the way it's. Yeah.
When you say study scores, you literally get the score in front of you while you're listening. Is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've done it. I actually used to go to sleep with headphones on, because I love Strauss, Richard Strauss. I think he's amazing. And some of his stuff was just ridiculous, like it's so insane, the stuff he was able to do. But they must have really rehearsed a lot, because that stuff is not easy to play. And Schoenberg, and they did there's a wel not nicht, although I can't say it right. Basically, it is basically an incredible genius when it comes to the way they can actually create small groups of strings. So I really believe that one of the secrets to good writing is to think, like the way I learned writing in small groups allowed me to learn how to make something really interesting within a very small ensemble. And that's a really good practice because you can do that in the DAW. You could just start off with, like, if you have a band, you have trumpet, you have, like, bass, guitar, whatever. And, you just write something, even if it sounds like crap in the DAW, because it's not so easy to get a trumpet sound, unless you can play trumpet yourself. That'd be nice. But basically, just to experiment with, trying to see how things sound in a small, capacity, because basically you're pushing the limits with a small group. And when you multiply that, it's great, So I think that's one of the things. Yeah.
You've done what, 8, 9 albums?
I think it's 8. Yeah, I think it's my 8th album.
And you have an album that you recently released. Tell me about On the Brink, right? That's the name, On the Brink?
Yeah, that's On the Brink. So I was trying to see if I could get Larry Klein, who I love because he always did. I love Melody Gardot, and I think I love Melody Gardot because of all the fantastic string arrangements, that they were on the album, and I think that was really drawn to creating some kind of sound like that. Even Diana Krall, or Shirley Horn, for example, a lot of the orchestrations that go on, like you were mentioning with, incredible Alan Broadbent. What's his name? Johnny Mann did some beautiful things on Here's the Life. Oh my God, gorgeous stuff. And Vince Mendoza, he's a beautiful writer for strings. And I wanted to do something like that. And I kept writing to Larry Klein originally to ask him if he needed any help with string writing. I tried over and over again, but it was difficult because he's a really busy guy. And so finally, he contacted me. He said, let's do something. And so I was really excited. So immediately I started thinking, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to write a whole album of strings. And so I did a couple of mock-ups for him and stuff. But then he got really busy. He had like 4 or 5 projects happening. And I kept trying, but I realized it wasn't going to happen because he was just too busy. So I decided just to do it myself. And that's how it all started. So I had this idea of just doing a whole album of strings, which I always wanted to do anyway. So that was exciting.
You sing, you play, you arrange and orchestrate, and you compose. 4 or possibly more active. How do you stay sharp in each of those?
I lose my temper a lot. No. I basically, I think my biggest struggle is, like, working with Pro Tools. I mean, I'm not the greatest, but I know what I want to hear. So that's the thing that really matters. And every single thing I do is always about what I want to hear. So I will work nonstop for, I'm famous. You can ask my children how bad I am. I will not stop. And I'm quite obsessive when it comes to trying to finish something that I want to write or something like that. And so, I have to do each one of them separately. I think of them as different compartments. Like, I didn't actually think I was going to play piano as much on the album because I don't think of myself as the greatest piano player, but I am a minimalist kind of a player. And I kind of like that style playing, and when it's appropriate, in this particular scenario, it was okay. Except for the 2 tracks Michael Plera plays on, which I'm very happy he did that. But basically it's important to try and focus on one thing, getting one job done, doing the next job, and then really practicing. I practice a lot when I practice. And vocals, I do exercises every time, warm up. I have a really good voice teacher. And it's really amazing because, you know, I'm not young anymore, but I basically have my voice. I have better control of my voice now than I did 20 years ago. So whoever said that, and you know, people don't realize they should listen to stories about Frank Sinatra because he used to practice every single day. And a lot of people don't realize, oh, he's just a, you know, crooner. He's just going to sing or whatever. He's
Natural.
an incredibly diligent guy. And, you know, and I think, I mean, I was really lucky because I had a very good teacher and basically, and it took me a really long time to find somebody, but again, like my singing is, you know, I have a certain type of style, but I don't think it's perfect for a lot of different things. But I basically wanted to do the job that I thought I could do in this particular environment. So I just did one little thing at a time, basically. Yeah.
Right. Where do you see Denise 3 years, 5 years from now?
I really want to be doing film and orchestration. I would love to do someone's orchestration for their album. Because I really love it and I'm good at it. and I really believe I can help a lot of people because of my experience actually, and also because I you know, I've been through a lot of different styles of music, so I'm not limited to, you know, just one style of music. So you know, I'm that's why I'm grateful. I teach a couple of days a week in a college here in the Olive White Platform One, and basically it's great because I'm always exposed to new music all the time for whatever it is. It's important, you know, so I think it's important to have that. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What is the role of a music supervisor in a film? What does a music supervisor do?
So what they basically do is they act on behalf of the producer and whoever else is maybe even the composer, depends on, and they look and search for musicians and music that's applicable to that particular film. So they really research a lot of people in order to find the music or the style that might be appropriate for the film, because it's not easy. I mean, even just the other day, it was something I saw in Ditto Music, and they were saying, oh, this is a pitch for these 4 different types of things. And you have to really look hard because basically there's so many categories. And then you have to always listen to the temp track. And so the temp track is always the, you know, not to say that it's going to be the final thing, but very often it's the most powerful thing because that's what people remember when it comes to film. Especially when it comes to the first part of the, you know, the music. So yeah, that's pretty much, and also they might be involved with doing the, you know, if they're doing the orchestrations, or you know, involved with the orchestrations, or might be organizing people to do the writing orchestration or stuff like that. So it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Great. I want to wrap this up by wishing
Okay.
you all the best. Good luck, and on your album On the Brink.
Thank you so much.
They can get that where? Where can they source
Oh,
that?
you can get it on all the platforms. You can buy it from Bandcamp, and of course, you obviously can listen on Spotify. It's on Apple Music, everything. It's on all the major platforms, and I also have physical CDs, which I'm in the process of setting up a little store for that. I haven't done that yet, actually.
And you'll have a website? What's your website?
Yes, my website's DeniseMangiardi.com.
DeniseMangiardi.com.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Denise, this has been absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
I will thank you. I will turn off our recording and we'll say our goodbyes, okay?
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Nick.
so much. Bye-bye.